Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahara Rose DeVore, the founder of the Travel Coach Network and the creator and instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today, we have a lovely guest. We have Emma Weissmann, who is the managing editor of Travel Age West. Depending on the day, you might find Emma racing against the clock to finish a scoop, crafting an in-depth human interest piece, penning op-eds on travel industry affairs, writing first-person cruise and hotel reviews, or working to refine Travel Age West's digital and social media strategy. Additionally, as the host of Travel Age West Humans of Travel podcast and a co host of the Trade Secrets podcast, which is produced in conjunction with Travel Weekly, Emma highlights the successes of exceptional individuals within the travel industry. Emma, thank you so much for being on the TCN podcast. I am so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Sahara. I'm so happy to be here. And it's exciting to be on the other side of the interview because it doesn't happen very often for me.
No, I totally understand that. Well, we always love, before we dive into all the nitty-gritty, tell us, where did your love of travel stem from?
So I am really lucky in the fact that I was somewhat born into the travel industry. My parents started a travel textbook company back in the 80s for travel advisors, formerly known as travel agents. So I grew up kind of surrounded by it and was able from a really young age to go on the road with my dad while he was, working for Weissmann Travel Reports, was what it was called at the time. It's now called Travel 42. He's a journalist as well. So I would kind of sit back, be his plus one, and watch him do his thing. And it really is kind of what ignited that spark within me. And, once you start traveling, it's, you get the bug. It's hard to kind of go back after that. So I would say it stemmed from honestly exposure from a very young age and just learning all that the world has to offer, which is a heck of a lot.
Is there, I love that. I love that I hear that often from some of my guests that they get the bug because of a family member or, a memory that they had from their family experiences. Was there a place that really impacted you in a positive way or really made an imprint on your life?
That's a really great question. I would say there are two trips that come to mind. The first was when I was younger. I think I was about 12. And my dad took me to Honduras for a summer. I think it was summer or spring break. And I just remember my parents are divorced. So I was talking to him on the phone about this. I was at my mom's house and he told me, for your summer break, we're going to go to Honduras. And I was just like, as a little kid, you want to hear like Disney World or you want to hear, Costa Rica or somewhere. And I didn't even know where Honduras was. And I was like, what is this place? But that trip really taught me a lot. We visited a lot of villages. So I really saw poverty for the first time. I was just I think it was like a motorized dugout canoe for like 8 hours where I was just kind of taking everything in. There was nothing to entertain me. And that was like, I just got thrown into it. It really left an impact on me. I think I came back a different person from that trip, and Honduras will always have a place close to my heart. The second trip took place in my adult life in 2020, just prior to the pandemic. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with my dad and my brother. It was a charity climb. So we were raising money for Tourism Cares. It's a travel industry nonprofit, but it's just so mentally taxing, physically taxing. You have a lot of time to just sit with yourself and think. It's not like you're really chatty as you're climbing up a mountain. It's hard to breathe sometimes. So that was a lot of self-reflection on that trip. And then of course, making it to the top is the greatest reward there is. So yeah, I would say that those are the two trips, one as a child or an adolescent, and then one as an adult.
I you sharing the story of climbing the mountain. I did not climb Kilimanjaro, that's for sure. But I did trek from Cusco to Machu Picchu and then
Wow.
did that. So that whole, I think it was like five days and 6 nights or something walking. And it was pure mountain range of climbing up. And when you were talking about the physical exertion and it really it challenges you and shows you not only your physical strengths, but your mental strengths and your weaknesses. And and you're out in the wilderness where there's not much entertainment or things to uh to distract you other than what is going on in, the surroundings that you're in. But
Absolutely. Yeah, you've probably had a very similar experience doing that because it's just one of those things where if you don't like to be alone, it can be kind of hard because you're alone with yourself. You're kind of pushing yourself and motivating yourself to go along, and it's a completely different environment than you're used to. So yes, I think we probably had a very similar experience there. It was very transformative for sure.
yeah, I always say that that Cusco track was literally the most physically grueling and mentally grueling thing I've ever done. And it really did change me in so many different ways. You shared that your dad is a journalist as well. I once met your dad at a ASA event, but he's so kind. You were saying how you were kind of shadowing him when you were little. What exactly it made you though get or inspired you to get into the travel writing? Just because your dad was a journalist, what was in you that really also wanted to share these stories and get into travel writing?
That's a great question because I will say, even before my love of travel, my love of writing was pretty front and center from a young age when I was really little. And I mentioned my parents were divorced. So my dad lived in Texas and then he moved up to New York City. That's where he is now. My mom is in Chicago. So I did a lot of flying back and forth. And when I was really little and I wasn't flying by myself yet, my dad would fly to Chicago, pick me up, take me to Texas or New York, wherever he was living at the time, and then bring me back. And during those plane rides, we would sit down and write stories. And it's funny because now, obviously, we have the screens on the back of the chairs, or people can stream from their phone while they're flying. But back then, in the mid 90s, it wasn't like that. You really had to entertain yourself. So I would dictate my stories to him and he would write them down. And we even like sent in a couple to a publishing house, which I'm sure he was just humoring me by doing that. But he kind of encouraged me to just, you have something important to say it, use your imagination, your creativity. And through that experience, and also I was on every single newspaper at every school I went to, from elementary school, middle school, all the way up to being editor in chief of my high school paper and then doing the daily newspaper at my college. Writing was always a theme in my life. So I loved travel, but I would say the writing component was separate from that for a really long time. When I was able to figure out that I could kind of merge the two of them, that was really special. But I didn't know I was going to do that all the way up through college. I mean, I was thinking I might work at a newspaper one day. Like I had no idea, but I knew that I loved writing. So the marriage of those two things came after college. But I'm so happy that there were those opportunities there, and being able to watch him while I was traveling showed that to me. I'm sure a lot of people don't really know how to get into the writing space, and it's hard. You have to get your foot in the door some way, and I was lucky to be exposed at that just for my entire life.
Was there a certain experience or opportunity or something that inspired you to marry both your love of travel and your passion for writing?
So I had an internship. I think it was might have been the middle of college after my sophomore year at Travel Weekly. And before that, I'd had internships. I was like an intern at a blog that helps people get into college, like the admissions process. But that internship at Travel Weekly was kind of my first step into it. And I remember my dad was a little hard on me because I was living with him at the time and we were going into the same office, which was in Secaucus, New Jersey, but he lived in Manhattan. And he said, no, you're going to like take the trains and the buses and do the 2-hour commute. And I'm going to drive my car. And he wanted to kind of keep that separate. So I was kind of thrown into it, and I wrote a cover story for Travel Weekly during that summer on entertainment focused tours. I was kind of bopping around the city, going to different events, and I was like, yeah, I like this. I really like this. And then the next year, I did an internship with National Geographic. So a little bit different. It's consumer facing rather than trade, like Travel Weekly is for travel advisors and people who work in the travel industry. But then I thought, maybe not a newspaper, but maybe magazines are kind of where my interests are through Nat Geo. Travel Age West, and I'm sure we'll get into it more later in the episode, but it's great because it is a trade publication for travel agents, so it has that component to it, but it feels a little bit more like a magazine than Travel Weekly does. So it all kind of led me to where I am today. I'm guessing, like going back through it and all the steps of what got me there.
What do you think would be what was your biggest obstacle on your journey getting to where you are now as the managing editor of Travel Age West? Was there
You
anything that,
know, There is. And it's kind of funny because I recently recorded a podcast with Jamie Beseda, my co-host at Trade Secrets, and it was like a Meet the Host episode. And I never really talked about this publicly, but I will say, as much as like I love my dad and I'm so happy that he was a mentor for me for my entire professional career, the first couple of years when I kind of was dipping my toe into the pond of this, I was super worried that everything that I was going to do was going to reflect on him, that I was going to be somewhat in his shadow for, the majority of my time in travel. And that was really hard on me, especially as like a 22-year-old who's in her first job, and she goes to a conference, and as soon as she says her last name, someone's like, "Oh, Arnie, like I know him. Luckily he's well liked." So I have that going for me for sure. But it was a little bit of an obstacle to kind of carve out my own identity and voice and have people get to know me past that. And I'm there now, so I can reflect back on that. But I would say that was a pretty big obstacle, and just being confronted with, oh, that's how you got the job. I got that a few times, and I always felt like I kind of had to prove myself in other ways.
yeah, which makes total sense. We hear that often, whether it's in sports or, business or something as well too. But what about your journey to Travel Age West? Tell us about that publication and what kind of content and is in it. And you said that it's for travel advisors. What could someone look or what kind of value could they get out of the publication?
Sure. So Travel Age West, like I mentioned before, trade publication, we like to say that we're for the modern, innovative travel advisor, those entrepreneurs, the new age of travel agents. So we focus a lot on professional development for travel advisors and people who work in travel. So you might find articles about how to best work with a business development manager at a hotel. What goes into that relationship? What are the questions you should be asking them, or how to best use a CRM and really get organized with your business. What technology tools are you using? So a lot of it is education, and we're interviewing travel advisors in the community to just say, hey, like, what are you doing that's working? What are you doing that's not working? We also do cover the news, but it's a little bit different than a straight news story that maybe a publication like Travel Weekly would cover. We might do the same topic, but we're going to have a little bit more analysis on how that affects travel advisors. And maybe we're going to interview them to get their reaction to the news or talk about the bigger impacts of the story. So in addition to that, I kind of went to the business side of things. We like to do some fun articles as well. We have a lot of cruise reviews, hotel reviews. We cover destinations. And this is all with the travel agent in mind. So if they're reading this article, how are they best going to sell the destination or the hotel, the cruise, the product, whatever it may be, to the clients? What do they need to know? And what I love about our writing is I feel like it's pretty high energy. Usually the person writing it has experienced this, and so it's first person. You really feel like you're there with them and they're taking you through it, but it's also informational and you get a lot of educational value from it. So Travel Age West formerly was a regional publication. It's been around for more than 50 years. Now we consider ourselves to be a little bit more national, since people are coming to us from Google or they're finding our podcast through Apple or Spotify. So it's changed a little bit, but the main thing that we've kept the same is we're really for travel advisors and that community of business owners.
I love that. Are you seeing any trends or common themes in the world of travel advisors, travel professionals nowadays? Anything that comes to mind to share?
Yeah. So we have our own research series. We conduct original research. So we're constantly polling travel advisors to just see what issues are top of mind for them. I will say there are a lot of new to industry travel advisors who might be coming from another career. So we've just had an influx of new agents coming in. So that's a huge thing. There's a lot of newbies out there who are just kind of learning about everything, and it's really promising for the future of this profession. We're really happy about that. In terms of travel, we've noticed, and this is not new, but sustainability is huge. So a lot of travel suppliers are kind of amending their practices to be a little bit more eco-friendly, and travel advisors are demanding this. They're not just going to book with you for a price. They want to know that the company upholds the same values that they have, that their client has. Wellness is huge. And I know you are a wellness junkie as well. So wellness is always huge. And then recently I just did a cover story on accessible travel, and that's getting a lot of attention these days. Clients, whether you know it or not, have accessibility needs. If we're lucky, we're all going to age into a disability one day. So it's important to know what the options are, and suppliers are kind of shifting their attitudes away from basic compliance to going a little bit above and beyond and seeing the humanity aspect of that and accessibility. So I would just to give you a few of them, those I say
Yeah.
are probably the top ones I can think of right now.
Yeah, we kind of see things, in the world of the Travel Coach Network and my research in just tourism in general. You touch on things like sustainability, and within that we hear things like responsible tourism, more mindful travel as well, of the impact that we make on the communities and on the planet. And then the world of wellness really is gaining a lot more depth to transformation and intentional travel. So it really is an exciting time. And I'm not surprised that you're seeing such an influx of travel advisors flocking to your publication. And your platform, because I've seen the same thing for the Travel Coach Network. People, I think the past several years, because of the pandemic, really lit a fire under our everyone's innate passion and love and need for travel. And it's something that we've always just turned to as human beings for so many personal healing and wellness related reasons to connect, and whether it's our social well-being and more. And so I think that people are really interested in helping other people have an experience something similar to what they have that has transformed them before. And so it really is the tourism industry is a wonderful industry to be in, and also a great time right now because there's so much creativity and so much good things that are changing, shifting in this industry. So that's really exciting. And I'm sure you touch on so many of those topics in your publication as well, too.
We like keeping our eye on kind of what's coming after the pandemic, because obviously we know that was a really hard time for everybody, and especially our industry really was in a major depression. And now we're coming back and we're thinking, okay, how do we do this differently, right? And like travel is so important to so many people. They might save up for 10 years to go on that bucket list trip, and then they weren't able to go anywhere for a couple of years. And so it's just puts that much more importance and significance on trips like that. And I mean, I think we both know that we're really proud to be in an industry that can to give those experiences, and it's just important in life.
Yeah, definitely. What was it, a couple weeks ago, a month ago or something, time flies by. I had invited you and Mindy to the Travel Coach Network to give tips on how to pitch to the media and publicity, because I'm just a massive fan of just getting your name and visibility through publications and podcasts and stuff. But Putting your journalist and editorial hat on, do you have any tips for the travel agents, the travel advisors, the travel coaches, the travel business owners that are listening to this episode on being a better travel writer? Because we write copy and content in our social media for our marketing. Some people have blogs, many people have blogs, whether it's the story of their own that they're sharing on their About Me on their website, whether it's a pitch that they're going to send to a podcast or a publication. Do you have any tips on just how to be a better writer? What kind of story ideas for them to think about?
Yeah, I'll take the pitching part first. And that's what we mainly talked about on the webinar a couple of weeks ago. And Mindy Potter is our executive editor at Travel Age West. She joined me, and that was a fantastic session. And I think it's recorded somewhere. But if you're pitching, whether it's because you want to be on a podcast or you want to write something for a travel magazine or whatever it may be, the one piece of advice that I always give to people, especially if you're just starting out, is take some time to do the research on who you're pitching. For example, if you wanted to pitch Travel Age West, you would need to know A, our audience is travel advisors. B, this is the type of content that we produce. C, this is our voice. This is how we write. One element of being a really good writer is to be adaptive and to kind of adopt the voice and the style of whatever publication you're pitching. So do your research. It might take an hour to kind of comb through a website and see what they have on there, but editors notice those things. They really do. So I'll say, A, do your research. When it comes to actually writing, let's say that you're writing copy about your business, and I'm not a marketer, so I feel like I can only speak to just writing in a general sense, but have somebody proofread it. That would be my number one piece of advice, because it's you're passionate and you're writing from emotion and it's something that's so close to you. Have a second set of eyes, because a lot of times they will catch things that you don't catch. They might reflect back on you. Well, if I am coming to this website and I don't know anything about your business, this sentence kind of trips me up a bit. I get a little confused. Maybe you can say that more clearly or concisely. So I would say have a second set of eyes, for sure. But one thing I do want to note too, most travel magazines, if you're wanting to write for them, we don't really let people write about their own products. So like if I'm a travel business and let's say I'm operating tours in California, if I got a pitch from that travel business that said, I want to write a story about my own product, we're probably not going to accept it. So it's just something to keep in mind. Like maybe a better approach would be to pitch a publication and say, if you're writing about tours in California, I would love to be interviewed for that. I'm an expert in this field, or you please use me as a source, rather than offering to write the article, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And those types of tips are extremely valuable because pitching to the media isn't always easy, and getting published or contributing to a publication, or you know getting that yes for that being that podcast guest, it's not always easy. And sometimes when we get no's, it can be, if it feels like I'm not good enough, or my message isn't good enough, or my story or my business isn't good enough. But that's not really the case. And I know what something that you said in when you visited the TCN was that, don't take that no as a never again, right?
Yes, absolutely. That is so important. And I'm a really sensitive person. I like to think that I have a thick skin, but I really don't. And no is hard to hear. And you have that little voice in your head that's your own worst critic that's saying you're not good enough. Why would you even bother done that? And the fact of the matter is, maybe it just wasn't right for that moment. And maybe as an editor, I'm getting 200 emails and I'm looking at yours and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to file this away for a later time whenever I do end up writing about tours in California, or whenever I do need an expert in that space. So, like you said, no does not mean never. And maybe it's just also not the right publication for you. So go somewhere else. Like it takes a long time to land something. It's every publication's needs are different. So yeah, I would say that that's a huge tip. I mean, I hate saying no to people, and it's really nothing about the business or the product. I'm sure it's a wonderful business and we would love to give exposure. It just might not be a fit at that moment.
Yeah, that's very true. Timing really is everything. I truly
Yeah.
believe that in all aspects of life and business. But I understand how excited we can be when we're pitching all the time and we're waiting for that yes to come. But, you know, I remember when I pitched a TEDx talk back in 2018, and I it was crickets for me, and I was, a bit bummed out. But then I was um approved, I guess is the word, to do it last October to give a TEDx talk. And I remember reflecting on when I pitched in 2018, and I was like, I am so glad I did not get accepted because because medium publicity and visibility, whether you're speaking on a stage or you're in a publication, it's strategy for your business.
Yep.
There's a message and a reason that you're there, a person, an ideal client audience you're trying to speak to. And I was like, my messaging now is so different from what my messaging and my goal was back then. So I'm so glad that I had that time to build up get that clarity on what it is that I really wanted to say and how I wanted to use that platform. So it's the same thing for media and publicity. So anyone listening, if you feel bummed out when you get no's, just keep on going because your time will
Yeah.
come, whatever that goal in mind is for you.
Absolutely. And if you are constantly getting yeses, like where's the growth and where's the learning in that? Like you do need to kind of and if it's not a machine that's saying no to you, it's an actual person and they're willing to give you feedback about why it's not the right fit at that moment, that's all great information to take with you for the next time that you go and do something. So it's yeah, and one of these things that always like comes back to me, and I guess it somewhat applies here, is that I always think about like these two doors, and one of them is comfort and one of them is growth, and you can only go through one. And so it's like if you're constantly going through that comfort, you're not really evolving, you're not growing, you're staying the same. So even those no's are kind of forcing you into that other door, which ultimately is going to be really beneficial for you.
Yeah, it's the same thing as when we think about travel. We get out of our comfort zone when we travel. We are in new environments, we're challenged, we feel uncomfortable at times, and we learn and we grow and we transform through it. That's one of the reasons why we fall in love with travel because of how it shapes us in our life and our perspectives and everything. But being able to understand when you're sharing of using that feedback to get to be better and to try again another time, that's really key in all aspects of business, especially in sales too. So if your client says no and understand why they're saying no, so you can shape your messaging differently. That's something when I first started my travel coaching business years ago, when there wasn't, you don't see the terms travel coach very much, as they're a lot more present now. But I would hear, that's not a thing, or, I would hear no's all the time. And I would take it so personal because I'm like you, Emma. I like to think I have a tough skin, but what I did learn in business that I'm a lot more sensitive than I thought I was. Um, but I
Which is a
remember for
beautiful thing, Sahar. I will say, like, whenever someone tries to use that as an insult, like you're too sensitive, I take it as a compliment because I'm like, yes, I am just I think sensitive people are they have more empathy. They're more in tune to their emotions. Like, thank you. I'm glad I'm like that.
Yeah, there's
So,
absolutely nothing wrong. I am an empath through and through, and I feel energy, everything. But it's I I would find myself getting frustrated when people didn't understand what I was trying to say or what I was trying to do. But then the moment that I realized that I should take any negativity I got or any feedback I got, and instead of it affecting me, I learned from it. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not clarifying myself well enough, or you know what, maybe let me try it a different way. And honestly, the moment I did that, my business and my mindset changed. I went from this, like I was trying to battle and convince people of something versus I now knew my path better and was clear in, what I was doing wrong before. So it's the same thing with writing and pitching and everything too. But Emma, as we wrap it up here, I want to first give you the space to tell us about your podcast. I'm going to be on Humans of Travel, so I'm so excited to record that with you and share that. But tell us what the Human Humans of Travel as well as Trade Secrets podcasts are all about.
Yeah, yeah, I'm so excited. We're recording tomorrow. So, yay, it's like a double whammy. So Humans of Travel is a one-on-one interview style podcast, very similar to what we're doing now. If anyone's familiar with Armchair Expert from Dax Shepard, a much more famous podcast than Humans of Travel. It's similar though. It's these honest conversations with people who work in the travel industry who have a great story. So we get into their background, we talk about their career, the challenges they've faced throughout their lives, and how that brought them to where they are today. I'm really excited because we have a new season coming out on Monday, March, I believe that's the 14th. Am I right? This upcoming Monday, the 13th. March 13th, we have a new season. We've got a brand new look, new artwork and everything. So I'm just excited to start sharing that again. And then Trade Secrets, we produce that in conjunction with Travel Weekly. So there's two magazines who are powering this. My co-host is Jamie Beseda. She's a senior editor at Travel Weekly, and that's much more business development focused. So rather than talking to one person, we usually have a topic that we're talking about, and travel advisors will send us questions. It might be on, we just had an episode on mentorship. It might be on creating boundaries between your business and your personal life, or sales strategies. It's really across the board. So we have people asking questions, and then we invite on an expert to address those questions. It's kind of like Dear Abby, but just for travel advisors. So that's a bi-monthly podcast, comes out every other week. Just like Humans of Travel, you can find that on all the podcast streaming services.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll be sure to link those in the show notes too for you. Before we wrap it up, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to share with our audience?
When is this coming out? Sorry, I just wanted to, before I plug anything.
Um, uh, in about a month or so from
In a
now.
month. Okay. Okay. For both travel advisors or businesses, suppliers, we have the Future Leaders in Travel Retreat coming up beginning of September, end of August, and it's going to be in Jamaica this year. And it's the premier travel industry event for travel industry colleagues who are between the ages of 22 and 37. They just have networking opportunities. There's workshops. It's just if you're relatively new in your career and you want to learn from your peers, and it's a great way to meet other people in the industry. And I can send you a link, Sahara, to when applications open for people to be notified about that. But that's probably what I would plug at this point. I was going to say we do have our Trendsetter Awards coming up. I think this episode's coming out after applications close, but for next year, Trendsetter Awards are for travel advisors. They can win awards in a variety of categories like social media, best group booking effort, best targeted marketing idea, and rockstar travel agent under 40. So we love celebrating people in our industry. I can send you a link for that as well.
Perfect. That sounds so fun. And before we end, what's a fun fact about yourself that doesn't have to be business or travel related? Do you have something to share with our audience?
I would say one of the things that just, I guess, floors my partner and anybody that I'm traveling with, I can fall asleep so easily on airplanes. It's like before the engines are even cranked on, I'm passed out in the seat, and I usually sleep the entire flight, no matter how long it is. So I think that's like my secret talent, is I can just fall asleep sitting up very easily,
What
surrounded
is
by strangers.
what about it does that? Is it the comfort of the airplane? Is it you're so exhausted by the time you get to the airplane?
I mentioned earlier, so I traveled so much as a kid going between my parents' houses. I think it is like a comfort, weirdly enough, like when the noise of the plane and just knowing that I have nowhere to be for the next few hours. My phone's not going to be on. For some reason, it triggers something in my bio that just is like, all right, time to conk out. And my boyfriend gets so mad because he can never sleep on flights, and here I am like on his shoulder for hours. But yeah, it's my secret skill.
That's funny. I love that. Well, Emma, thank you so much for being on the TCN podcast. I really truly can talk to you forever. You're so kind. Um, I cannot wait to share this episode for everyone. Please be sure to check us out on Instagram at the Travel Coach Network. Visit us at thetravelcoachnetwork.com. come give us a hello in our TCN global community on Facebook. The links for that and your free beginner's guide to travel coaching, as well as all of Emma's links, are going to be in the show notes, as they are for every episode. And if you know anyone who may be interested in travel coaching, please be sure to send them our way to our podcast. We truly appreciate it. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.